The autumn wind carried the smell of fallen leaves as Marcus Chen pulled his old Honda Civic into the pickup line at Riverside Elementary. It was the kind of October afternoon that reminded him of Jenny, the golden light filtering through the trees, the crisp air that smelled like possibilities. She had loved this season, would stand on their tiny apartment balcony with her coffee, watching the leaves change color, talking about all the things they'd build together, all the dreams that seemed so far away back then. Now those dreams had come true, and she wasn't here to see them. Marcus checked his reflection in the rearview mirror. 3 days of stubble, because Sophie had been up half the night with a fever, and he'd forgotten to shave that morning. Dark circles under his eyes that had become permanent fixtures. The faded logo on his work polo, M&C Maintenance, was barely visible anymore, the letters cracked from hundreds of washings. The logo stood for Marcus and Chen, his own company, ironically enough. He'd kept the old shirts even after the business grew beyond anything he could have imagined. They reminded him of where he'd started, where they'd started. Jenny used to iron these shirts every Sunday night, would lay them out for the week, always making sure the collar was perfect, even though nobody ever noticed. "Someone notices," she'd tell him when he laughed about it. "You notice, and that's enough." He still wore them, still washed them by hand because the machine was too rough on the worn fabric, still felt her presence in every thread. His work polo, faded from 1,000 washes, still bore the faint logo of a maintenance company that no longer existed. The fabric had softened over the years, comfortable in a way new clothes never were. Around him, the parade of luxury vehicles gleamed in the afternoon sun. A Mercedes G-Wagon idled 2 cars ahead. A Tesla Model X hummed silently behind him. The mothers who stepped out wore designer athleisure and carried bags that cost more than his monthly grocery budget. Marcus didn't mind. He'd never cared much about those things. The school doors burst open, and children poured out like a wave breaking on the shore. Marcus spotted her immediately, that unmistakable purple butterfly shirt and the pink backpack bouncing with every step. Sophie's black ponytail swung behind her as she ran, her gap-toothed smile visible from 50 feet away. "Daddy." She crashed into his legs with the full force of 7 years of unconditional love. He knelt down, catching her in his arms. "Hey, butterfly, how was school?" "We learned about butterflies today. Real ones, not just the ones on my shirt." She pulled back, her dark eyes sparkling. "Mrs. Patterson said butterflies can fly all the way to Mexico. Can we go to Mexico, Daddy?" Marcus chuckled, adjusting her backpack straps. "Maybe someday, sweetheart, but tonight, I have a special surprise for you." "A surprise?" Sophie's eyes went wide. "Is it ice cream? Is it a puppy? Is it a flying car?" "Better." He opened the car door for her. "We're going to stay somewhere really fancy tonight, like a palace." Sophie gasped dramatically, a hand flying to her mouth. "A real palace? With a princess?" "Well, maybe not a princess, but there might be a really big bathtub. With bubbles? So many bubbles." Sophie scrambled into her booster seat, practically vibrating with excitement. Marcus buckled her in, dropped a kiss on her forehead, and climbed into the driver's seat. As he pulled out of the school lot, he caught a glimpse of himself in the rearview mirror. The stubble he hadn't had time to shave, the tired lines around his eyes. It had been 3 years since Jenny passed. 3 years since the morning she didn't wake up, when he'd found her still and cold beside him, her hand still reaching for his, like she'd been trying to say goodbye. 3 years of learning to braid hair and pack lunches and be everything Sophie needed. 3 years of carrying a weight that never got lighter, just more familiar. The doctors had called it a rare complication from the pregnancy. Something about her heart that nobody had caught, that had been weakening slowly for years, until one night it simply stopped. Sophie had been 4 years old enough to remember, young enough that the memories were already fading into something soft and golden, like old photographs. Marcus made sure she remembered the important things. The bedtime stories Jenny used to tell about dragons and princesses, the way she'd dance in the kitchen while cooking, using wooden spoons as microphones, the sound of her laugh, full and unrestrained, the kind of laugh that made strangers smile. But tonight wasn't about grief. Tonight was about his little girl's birthday. 7 years old. The same age Jenny had been when her own parents had taken her to her first fancy hotel, a story she'd told Marcus on their third date, her eyes lighting up at the memory. "It was the most magical night of my life," she'd said, picking at the cheap tacos they could barely afford. "I felt like a princess, like anything was possible. Someday, when we have kids, I want to give them that same feeling." Marcus had promised her they would. And now, finally, he was keeping that promise. The Grand Meridian Hotel rose from downtown like a monument to excess. 42 stories of glass and gold, its name blazing in letters that probably cost more than Marcus's car. Valets in burgundy uniforms stood at attention near the entrance, their white gloves pristine despite the cooling autumn air. Marcus pulled up to the valet stand and stepped out. The closest valet, a young man who couldn't have been more than 22, looked at the Honda Civic with barely concealed disdain. "Sir, I think you might have the wrong—" "I'm checking in," Marcus said calmly, opening Sophie's door. The valet's eyebrows rose toward his hairline, but he caught himself. "Of course, sir. I'll just park this for you." Sophie hopped out, her rainbow-striped sneakers hitting the marble-inlaid sidewalk. Her neck craned back, trying to see the top of the building. "Daddy, it goes all the way to the clouds." "Almost, Butterfly." He took her hand, and together they walked through the revolving doors into another world. The lobby of the Grand Meridian was designed to intimidate. 30-foot ceilings adorned with gold leaf, crystal chandeliers that sparkled like captured starlight, marble floors so polished you could see your reflection. The air smelled like expensive flowers and quiet money. Sophie squeezed his hand tighter. "It's so sparkly," she whispered, as if speaking too loudly might break something. "It is pretty sparkly," Marcus agreed. They approached the reception desk, a massive mahogany structure that looked like it belonged in a museum. Behind it stood a woman who seemed designed to match the lobby's cold elegance. Platinum blonde hair pulled back so tight it must have hurt. A navy blazer with a gold pin that read, "Veronica Ashworth, Front Desk Manager." Pearl earrings that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. Her ice blue eyes swept over Marcus from head to toe. He watched her expression shift. The slight flare of nostrils, the tightening of thin lips, the way her chin lifted almost imperceptibly. He'd seen that look 1,000 times before. "Can I help you?" Her voice carried the practiced patience of someone who'd rather not. "Checking in," Marcus said. "The Penthouse suite, please." Veronica Ashworth blinked. Then she laughed, a short, sharp sound that drew glances from nearby staff. "I'm sorry, did you say the Penthouse suite?" "I did." She leaned forward slightly, her smile now carrying an edge sharp enough to cut glass. "Sir, the Penthouse suite runs $15,000 per night. Perhaps you meant to book at the Comfort Inn on 5th Street. It's much more accessible." Sophie tugged at Marcus's hand. "Daddy, what's she saying?" "Nothing, Butterfly. Just a little confusion." But Veronica wasn't finished. She turned to her colleague, a younger woman with wide eyes and a deer-in-headlights expression. "Jennifer, can you pull up alternative accommodations for this gentleman? Something more appropriate for his situation?" Jennifer's fingers hesitated over the keyboard. "Ma'am, I can check if he has a reservation." That won't be necessary. Veronica's voice cut through like ice. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside. We have actual guests waiting. Marcus glanced behind him. The lobby was nearly empty. I'm sure we can sort this out, he said calmly. If you'd just check the system. The system? Veronica laughed again, louder this time. A bellhop near the elevator glanced over. A concierge paused mid-conversation. Sir, this isn't a debate. The Grand Meridian has standards, and those standards don't include people who look like they just finished unclogging a toilet. Sophie's grip on his hand tightened. Daddy, why is the lady being mean? The words cut through the lobby's ambient music like a knife. Veronica's smile faltered for just a moment before hardening again. I'm not being mean, little girl. I'm being honest. Your father doesn't belong here. Now please. She pressed a button beneath the counter. I've called security. If you leave quietly, we won't have to make this any more embarrassing than it already is. Behind Veronica, the younger clerk, Jennifer, had gone pale. She opened her mouth as if to say something, then closed it again, her eyes darting nervously between her supervisor and Marcus. It was the look of someone who wanted to help, but was too afraid to risk her job. Marcus had seen that look before, on the faces of employees at companies he'd bought, people who'd been bullied by managers for so long, they'd forgotten they had a voice. It was one of the things he always changed first, creating an environment where people felt safe to speak up. A bellhop had stopped wheeling a luggage cart, pretending to check something on his phone while obviously watching the confrontation. Near the concierge desk, two well-dressed women had paused their conversation to observe, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. This was a spectacle now, a public humiliation designed to remind everyone who held the power in this building. Marcus felt something shift inside him. Not anger. He'd stopped getting angry at people like Veronica years ago. More like resignation. A tired acceptance that this was how the world worked, how it would always work. But then Sophie looked up at him with those big brown eyes, and he saw the confusion there, the hurt of watching someone speak to her father like he was nothing. Sweetheart, he said softly, do you remember what I told you about how people sometimes judge others? Sophie nodded slowly. You said some people only see what's on the outside, like a book cover. That's right. He smoothed her ponytail. And what do we do when people judge us? We stay kind anyway, because being kind is more important than being right. That's my girl. A security guard appeared, broad-shouldered, black suit, the kind of face that had seen too many drunk businessmen to be impressed by much. He approached Marcus with professional detachment. Sir, I'm going to need to escort you out. Of course. Marcus didn't move. But first, could you do me a favor? Could you ask Ms. Ashworth to check for a reservation under the name Chen? The security guard glanced at Veronica, who rolled her eyes so dramatically it was almost theatrical. Fine, if it'll get him out faster. She typed with aggressive keystrokes, her red nails clicking against the keyboard like tiny hammers. Chen, C-H-E-N. There's nothing here under... She stopped. The color drained from her face like water from a bathtub. What? She clicked furiously. That can't be... This must be a mistake. Is there a problem? The security guard stepped closer to the desk. Veronica's voice had dropped to barely a whisper. The reservation. It's not just for the penthouse suite. It's for... She looked up at Marcus, her ice-blue eyes now wide with something that looked a lot like fear. Sir, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize... Didn't realize what? The security guard was frowning now. The reservation is for the owner's suite, the permanent residence. Veronica's hands were shaking. The system says... It says he's Marcus Chen. The Marcus Chen. He's the... She couldn't finish the sentence. Her mouth moved, but no words came out, like a fish gasping for air on dry land. Jennifer leaned over her shoulder to look at the screen, and her eyes went wide. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God." The security guard, who had been standing patiently behind Marcus, shifted his weight. "Ma'am, what's going on?" "He's the owner." Jennifer's voice came out in a squeak. "He owns this hotel. He owns the whole Grand Meridian chain. He's Marcus Chen." The name rippled through the lobby like a stone dropped in still water. The bellhop dropped his phone. The two women at the concierge desk gasped audibly. Even the security guard took a step back, his professional detachment cracking for the first time. "The Marcus Chen?" he repeated. "The billionaire?" Marcus wished people wouldn't call him that. He didn't feel like a billionaire. He felt like a tired father who wanted to give his daughter a bath and read her a bedtime story. "Is there a problem here?" The new voice came from behind them. Marcus turned to see a heavy-set man in an expensive gray suit approaching with the purposeful stride of someone who ran things. Gerald Whitmore, the hotel's general manager, according to the gold nameplate on his chest. Behind him trailed a small entourage of assistants. "Mr. Whitmore!" Veronica's voice had jumped an octave. "We have a situation. This man claims to be Marcus." Gerald's face broke into a wide smile as he rushed forward, hand extended. "I didn't know you were coming in tonight. I would have had everything prepared. Is this your daughter? She's gotten so big." Sophie looked at Marcus with new curiosity. "Daddy, how does he know us?" Marcus smiled. "Mr. Whitmore and I have known each other for a while. Butterfly." Gerald was already snapping fingers at his assistants. "Get the owner's suite ready immediately. Fresh flowers in every room. Stock the kitchen with whatever Mr. Chen's daughter might like. What do you like, sweetheart? Ice cream? Candy?" "I like butterflies," Sophie said seriously. "Butterflies! Someone get butterfly decorations in that suite, within the hour." Gerald turned back to Marcus, still pumping his hand. "I am so sorry for whatever happened here. I assure you, my staff knows better than to—" He was babbling now, his forehead shiny with nervous sweat. Marcus watched as Gerald's assistants scrambled in different directions, one toward the elevator, another toward the gift shop, a third already on the phone with what sounded like a catering service. This was exactly what he'd tried to avoid. The fuss, the special treatment, the way people changed around him once they knew who he was. Jenny had hated it too. "I just want to be normal," she'd said once, after they'd been recognized at a restaurant and the chef had insisted on coming out to meet them personally. "I just want to eat my pasta without someone watching my every bite." They'd started dining at hole-in-the-wall places after that, little family restaurants where nobody knew their names, where they could just be Marcus and Jenny, two people who loved each other, instead of the Chens with their empire and their money and their goddamn news coverage. "Gerald," Marcus's voice was quiet but carried. "What's your front desk manager's name?" Gerald's smile flickered. "That's Veronica Ashworth, sir. She's been with us for—" "Veronica." Marcus turned to face her. She looked like she might be sick. "I'd like you to explain something to my daughter." Veronica opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "Sophie asked me why you were being mean. I told her that some people judge others by how they look, by the clothes they wear, by the car they drive." Marcus took a step closer to the desk. "I'd like you to explain to my 7-year-old daughter why you thought it was appropriate to humiliate her father in a lobby full of people, why you called security on us, why you suggested we belonged at a comfort inn." I didn't know." Veronica's voice cracked. "You didn't know I own this hotel. That's true." Marcus's voice remained calm, almost gentle. But here's what I'm wondering, Ms. Ashworth. If I had been exactly who you thought I was, a maintenance worker looking to treat his daughter to something special, would that have made your behavior acceptable? Silence stretched across the lobby. Even the ambient music seemed to have faded. Mr. Chen, I am so deeply sorry. I don't want your apology. Marcus looked at her steadily. I want you to think about the next person who walks through those doors in work clothes. The next father who's been saving for months to give his daughter one special night. The next person you might dismiss because they don't fit your idea of who belongs in a place like this. He reached down and picked up Sophie, settling her on his hip. She wrapped her arms around his neck. I built this hotel 12 years ago, Marcus said. Not because I wanted to own fancy buildings, but because my wife and I spent our honeymoon in the worst motel you can imagine. Paper-thin walls, stained carpets, a vending machine that ate our last dollar. We promised each other that someday everyone would have a place to feel special. A place where they'd be treated with dignity, regardless of what they looked like. His voice softened. My wife passed away 3 years ago. She never got to see this hotel finished, but I keep her dream alive every day. Or at least, I thought I did. Gerald Whitmore looked like he wanted the marble floor to swallow him whole. Mr. Chen, I assure you, this is not representative of our... I know, Gerald. Most of your staff are wonderful. Marcus shifted Sophie to his other hip. Elena Rodriguez in housekeeping. She's been here since opening day, hasn't she? Yes, sir. 10 years. She remembered my wife. Sent Sophie a birthday card last month. That's the Grand Meridian I built. Marcus looked back at Veronica, whose tears were now cutting tracks through her makeup. And that's the Grand Meridian I'd like to get back to. He turned and began walking toward the elevators, Sophie's head resting on his shoulder. Daddy? Sophie's voice was quiet. Yes, Butterfly? Is that lady going to be okay? Marcus glanced back. Veronica had collapsed into a chair, surrounded by concerned staff. Gerald was already on his phone, probably alerting HR. I think she learned something important today. What did she learn? That being kind costs nothing, but being unkind... He pressed the elevator button. That can cost everything. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Marcus stepped inside, Sophie still in his arms. Are we still staying in the palace? Sophie asked hopefully. We are. The best room they have. Will there still be bubbles in the bathtub? Marcus smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached his tired eyes. The biggest bubbles you've ever seen. As the elevator rose, Sophie pressed her nose against the glass wall, watching the lobby shrink below them. The crystal chandeliers became points of light, then stars, then nothing but a golden glow. Daddy? Yes, Butterfly? I like your work shirt, the blue one. You do? Yeah. She snuggled closer. It smells like you. Marcus held her tighter, blinking against the sudden sting in his eyes. Jenny had always loved that shirt too. The elevator doors opened onto the penthouse floor. A uniformed attendant stood waiting, her posture perfect, but her smile genuinely warm. Mr. Chen, Miss Sophie, welcome to the owner's residence. My name is Maria, and I'll be your personal concierge this evening. We've prepared the suite to your specifications, and the kitchen is standing by for any requests. Sophie's eyes went wide as they stepped into the residence. The entryway alone was larger than their entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, lights twinkling like earthbound stars against the darkening sky. Daddy, look! Sophie wiggled down from his arms and ran to the window, her rainbow sneakers squeaking against the marble. I can see everything. I can see the park. I can see the little tiny cars. Marcus walked up behind her, placing his hands on her shoulders. Pretty cool, huh? It's the coolest thing ever. She turned and looked up at him with sudden seriousness. Is this really ours? Well, sort of. I own the building, but I don't really live here. We have our own home, remember? Our apartment, Sophie nodded. With the squeaky floor and the neighbor's cat that visits. That's the one. But why do we live there if we have this? Marcus knelt down so he was at her eye level. Do you remember what I told you about your mama? Sophie's expression softened. She's watching us from the stars. That's right. And when Mama was alive, we talked a lot about what kind of people we wanted to be. We decided that we didn't want stuff to be what made us happy. We wanted each other, family, love. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. All this fancy stuff is nice for a special night, but it's not what makes life good. What makes life good? You. He tapped her nose. Every single day, butterfly. You make life good. Sophie threw her arms around his neck. You make life good too, Daddy. They stayed like that for a long moment, father and daughter silhouetted against the glittering cityscape. Finally, Sophie pulled back with renewed excitement. Can we see the bathtub now? Marcus laughed. Lead the way. The bathroom was, as promised, spectacular. A soaking tub the size of a small pool sat beneath a window with the same stunning view. Sophie immediately located the bubble bath, 17 different varieties arranged in neat rows, and began her extremely scientific process of smelling each one. This one smells like cake. Then cake it is. While Sophie supervised the bubble production, Marcus stepped back into the main room. His phone had been buzzing insistently. He pulled it out to find a string of messages from Gerald Whitmore. Mr. Chen, I cannot apologize enough for this evening's incident. Please know that we take this matter extremely seriously. Ms. Ashworth has been placed on immediate administrative leave pending a full review. Please let me know if there's anything at all, I can do to make this right. Marcus typed back a simple response. Don't fire her. The reply came almost instantly. Sir, I said, don't fire her. Give her a week to think about what happened. Then move her to guest services training. Let her work directly with people for a while. Sometimes the best lessons come from understanding the other side. A long pause. Then, that's very generous of you, Mr. Chen. I'll make the arrangements. Marcus pocketed his phone. Through the bathroom door, he could hear Sophie singing some song about mermaids, her voice echoing against the marble tiles. He walked to the window and looked out at the city he'd helped build. 3 hotels now, 12 apartment buildings, 2 shopping centers. A real estate empire that had grown far beyond anything he and Jenny had dreamed of when they were young and poor and wildly in love. It had started with a single building, a run-down apartment complex they'd bought for almost nothing because nobody else wanted it. They'd fixed it up themselves, spending weekends sanding floors and painting walls, learning as they went. Jenny had been 8 months pregnant with Sophie when they'd finished the last unit. Look at this, she'd said, standing in the empty apartment with her hands on her belly. Look at what we built. They'd sold that building for a profit and bought 2 more, then 4, then 8. The money started coming in faster than they could spend it, and Marcus had discovered something surprising. He was good at this, good at seeing potential where others saw problems, good at building things that lasted, but he'd never wanted to be a billionaire. He'd wanted to be a husband, a father, a man who could provide for his family without worrying about where the next meal would come from. The empire was Jenny's legacy now, her dream of creating places where people felt valued and respected. Marcus just tried to honor that dream the best he could. She would have loved this view. She would have loved Sophie's singing even more. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was Elena Rodriguez from housekeeping. Mr. Chen, I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. That woman should be ashamed of herself. Marcus smiled and typed back, "Thank you, Elena. How's your grandson doing? Starting kindergarten next month. Growing up so fast, just like your Sophie. Time flies. Give him a hug from us. Always. And Mr. Chen? Your wife would be proud of you. How you handled that tonight. She'd be real proud." Marcus had to blink a few times before he could respond. "Thank you, Elena. That means more than you know." "Daddy, the bubbles are ready." He laughed, sliding his phone back into his pocket. "Coming, Butterfly." The next hour was a masterpiece of controlled chaos. Bubble beards, bubble hats, a bubble castle that reached nearly to Sophie's chin before collapsing in a magnificent avalanche. By the time Marcus wrapped her in a towel the size of a small blanket, they were both thoroughly soaked and thoroughly happy. Room service arrived while Sophie was putting on her favorite pajamas, the ones with the rocket ships that she insisted were actually butterflies in disguise. Marcus had ordered every breakfast item on the menu because Sophie couldn't decide what she wanted. "Pancakes!" she shrieked when the cart rolled in. "And waffles, and eggs, and—" "What's that?" "That's Eggs Benedict. It looks like a tiny hat." They picnicked on the living room floor, surrounded by silver-domed plates and starched white napkins. Sophie declared the pancakes the best in the universe, and the orange juice almost as good as the kind we make at home. "That's because home orange juice has love in it," Marcus said. "And pulp." "Yes, and pulp." Sophie picked at a piece of bacon thoughtfully. "Daddy, are you really super rich?" Marcus set down his fork. "Where did you hear that?" "Mrs. Kowalski said something at school pickup once. She told her friend that you were a low-key billionaire, but I didn't know what that meant." "Did you ask her?" "No. I just thought it meant you were really good at playing hide-and-seek with money." Marcus laughed, really laughed, the kind of laugh that came from somewhere deep. It had been months since he'd laughed like that. "That's actually not far off, Butterfly." "But are you? Rich, I mean." He reached over and wiped a bit of syrup from her chin. "Do you remember what Mama used to say about money?" Sophie scrunched up her face, thinking. "She said it was like shoes." "Close. She said money was like clothes, nice to have, but it doesn't change who you are underneath." He picked up his coffee cup, fine china, probably worth more than his car payment. "Yes, I have a lot of money, but that's not what makes me your daddy. That's not what makes me happy. You understand?" "I think so." Sophie bit into a piece of waffle. "So we're rich, but we're also normal?" "Exactly. We're rich in things that matter, like family, and love, and really good breakfast food. And Grandma's hugs. The richest kind of hugs there are." After dinner, they curled up on the massive sectional couch to watch Sophie's favorite movie, a cartoon about a fish finding his son. Sophie had seen it approximately 400 times, but still gasped at the scary parts and giggled at the funny ones like it was brand new. Halfway through, she started to fade. Her blinks grew longer. Her giggles turned to yawns. "Daddy." Her voice was sleepy. "Yes, Butterfly?" "Today was the best birthday ever." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "I'm glad, sweetheart." "Even with the mean lady? Even with her?" Sophie was quiet for a moment. Then, "Daddy, I don't want you to be sad anymore." Marcus felt his heart catch. "What do you mean, baby?" "Sometimes you look at Mama's picture and you get really quiet. And I know you miss her. I miss her too." Sophie snuggled closer. "But I don't want you to be so sad that you forget to be happy, because I think Mama would want you to be happy." For a long moment, Marcus couldn't speak. 7 years old, and she saw more than most adults ever would. "You're right, Butterfly." His voice was thick. Mama would want us to be happy. And you know what? Being with you makes me really, really happy. Even when I make a mess? Especially when you make a mess. Sophie smiled sleepily. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Butterfly. More than all the stars. More than all the butterflies? More than all the butterflies in Mexico. She was asleep before the fish found his son. Marcus carried her to the bedroom, a ridiculous confection of silk sheets and goose-down pillows, and tucked her in. He stood there for a while, watching her sleep, this perfect person he'd helped create with the love of his life. Jenny would have loved tonight, not the hotel or the drama or even the penthouse suite. She would have loved watching Sophie discover bubbles and pancakes and city lights. She would have loved the way their daughter was growing into someone kind and brave and full of wonder. I'm trying, Jen, he whispered to the darkness. Every day, I'm trying. He walked back to the window. Below, the city hummed with its evening rhythms. People rushing home from work, cars flowing like blood through arteries of asphalt, lives intersecting and diverging in patterns too complex to follow. Somewhere down there, Veronica Ashworth was probably replaying the evening's events over and over, maybe crying, maybe angry, maybe, just maybe, starting to understand something she hadn't before. Marcus hoped it was the last one. He'd meant what he said about kindness. It cost nothing to be decent to people. Nothing at all. His phone buzzed one final time. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Chen, this is Veronica Ashworth. Mr. Whitmore gave me your contact information. I know I don't deserve your time, but I wanted to say that I'm sorry. Not because you own the hotel, but because what I did was wrong. I've spent tonight thinking about everyone I've probably treated the way I treated you. People who didn't have the power to do anything about it. I'm ashamed, and I'm grateful for the second chance. I won't waste it. Marcus read the message twice. Then he typed back, Thank you for writing this, Veronica. That took courage. I look forward to seeing the person you become. He set the phone down and looked out at the stars beginning to peek through the city's light pollution. Jenny had always loved stars, said they were how the universe reminded us that even in darkness, there was always light somewhere. Daddy? He turned. Sophie was standing in the doorway, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, looking impossibly small against the massive bedroom behind her. Bad dream? He asked. No, I just wanted to see the stars with you. He held out his hand. She padded over and climbed into his lap, and together they sat at the window, watching the night deepen over the city below. Daddy? Yes. Butterfly? When I grow up, I want to build hotels too. Nice ones where everyone's allowed. Marcus smiled. I think that's a wonderful dream. And I'll let people bring their dogs and have free ice cream in every room. Now that's a business model I can support. Sophie yawned. Will you tell me about Mama again? The story about how you met. So Marcus did. He told her about the coffee shop on 3rd Street and the girl with the paint-stained fingers who couldn't find her wallet. About their first date at a taco truck. About the wedding where it rained so hard they got married under a gas station awning, laughing so hard they could barely say their vows. He told her about dreams shared in cramped apartments, about working 3 jobs while building something from nothing, about the day they found out Sophie was coming, and how they'd cried happy tears for an hour straight. He didn't tell her about the diagnosis, about the treatments that didn't work, about the final days that still felt like yesterday. Some stories could wait until she was older. For now, she deserved the beautiful parts. And then, Marcus finished, on the day you were born, your mama looked at you and said, she's going to change the world. And you know what? I think she was right. But Sophie was already asleep again, her breathing slow and peaceful against his chest. Marcus carried her back to bed. This time, he climbed in beside her, still in his faded work polo and worn khakis. The silk sheets felt strange against his work-worn hands, but Sophie's warmth beside him felt exactly like home. Tomorrow, they'd go back to their apartment with the squeaky floors and the neighbor's cat. Back to school drop-offs and homework help and bedtime stories. Back to their regular life. But tonight, they had the stars. They had each other. And somewhere, he liked to think, Jenny was watching. "Thank you," he whispered to the darkness. "For her. For everything." And then Marcus Chen, owner of the Grand Meridian and 3 other hotels and more money than he could ever spend, fell asleep beside his daughter in his work clothes, dreaming of the woman he'd loved and the life he was building, one day at a time. One day at a time. 3 months later. The Grand Meridian's monthly staff meeting was usually a dry affair, numbers and projections and complaints about the laundry service. But today, Gerald Whitmore had something different to share. "As many of you know," he began, standing at the front of the conference room, "we underwent some significant changes following an incident in October. What you may not know is the full scope of what's happened since." He clicked a button, and a photograph appeared on the screen behind him. It was Veronica Ashworth, but not the Veronica anyone remembered. She was wearing jeans and a simple blouse, standing in what looked like a community center, helping an elderly woman fill out paperwork. "Ms. Ashworth completed our new guest services immersion program 2 weeks ago. She spent 8 weeks working directly with guests who needed additional support, families dealing with medical emergencies, elderly travelers, people visiting loved ones in hospitals. She has since requested a permanent transfer to our guest relations department." Murmurs rippled through the room. "But more importantly," Gerald continued, "Mr. Chen has implemented a new policy across all Grand Meridian properties. I'd like to read it to you now." He pulled out a small card and began. "Every guest who enters our doors deserves respect, regardless of their appearance, their clothing, or the vehicle they arrived in. The Grand Meridian was built on the belief that hospitality means welcoming everyone, not just those who look the part. We will treat every person who walks through our doors as if they might own the hotel, because someday they might." He set the card down. "Mr. Chen has also established the Jenny Chen Foundation, which provides complimentary hotel stays to families dealing with medical crises, military families during deployment returns, and anyone who could use a little magic in their lives but can't afford it." In the back of the room, Elena Rodriguez wiped her eyes with her uniform sleeve. "Are there any questions?" Gerald asked. Jennifer, the young clerk who had witnessed everything that night, raised her hand. "What happened to Mr. Chen? Is he okay?" Gerald smiled. "I received an email from him last week. He and Sophie are doing well. They're planning another birthday tradition. Apparently, Sophie has decided she wants to visit every Grand Meridian property before she turns 18. That's a lot of traveling," someone said. "Mr. Chen says that's the point. He wants Sophie to see how many people they employ, how many families they support, how much good can come from treating people with dignity." Gerald's voice softened. He said Jenny would have wanted her to understand that wealth is only valuable if you use it to lift others up. The room was quiet. "That's all for today," Gerald said. "Remember, everyone who walks through that door deserves our best, not because they might be important, but because they are, all of them." Marcus Chen never stopped wearing his old work polo shirts. He wore one to the grand opening of the Grand Meridian Chicago, where the mayor herself tried to steer him toward a designer jacket. He wore one to Sophie's school career day, where he explained that he fixed things for a living, and technically, he wasn't wrong. He wore one to Jenny's grave every Sunday morning, where he sat on the grass and told her about their daughter's latest adventures. The shirts were faded now, almost see-through in places. But Marcus didn't care. They were a reminder of who he was before the money, who he still was underneath. Sophie grew up in two worlds, the world of private jets and penthouse suites, and the world of public schools and Saturday morning cartoons. She learned to read a balance sheet and braid her own hair. She learned that kindness was more valuable than currency, and that the measure of a person wasn't what they owned, but how they treated others. On her 10th birthday, she asked for one thing: to work a shift at the Grand Meridian front desk. Marcus watched from across the lobby as his daughter checked in guests, her smile genuine and bright. She didn't mention that her father owned the place. She just treated every person who approached like they were the most important guest in the world. Because to her, they were. Near the end of her shift, an elderly man approached the desk. He was wearing overalls and work boots, his hands calloused and rough. Sophie could see the hesitation in his eyes, the same hesitation her father had described from that night years ago. "Welcome to the Grand Meridian," Sophie said, her smile never wavering. "How can I help you today?" The man looked surprised. I'm here to visit my grandson. He's getting married tomorrow. I know I don't look like I belong in a place like this, but—" "Sir," Sophie interrupted gently, "everyone belongs here. That's what this place is for." The man's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, young lady. That's real kind of you." "It's not kindness," Sophie said. "It's just the truth. Now let me show you to your room." Marcus watched his daughter lead the man toward the elevator, chatting easily about the wedding and the weather, and how excited the grandson must be. And he thought about Jenny, and the hotel she'd dreamed of all those years ago. A place where everyone felt special. A place where dignity wasn't determined by dress code. A place that was finally, truly, everything she'd wanted it to be. He pulled out his phone and typed a text to Gerald. "She's going to run this company someday." The reply came instantly. "She already does, sir. She already does.